I took a paid work trip between Christmas and New Year. My girlfriend turned it into a fantasy romantic getaway, booked surprise dates, packed lingerie, blew up when I said no, and then went home crying. I, 38 male, am a self-employed building surveyor. About a week before Christmas, a long-standing client got in touch asking if I could take on an urgent job that needed to be completed between Christmas and New Year. Normally, I'd be reluctant to commit to work during that period, but this time it genuinely suited me. I don't have kids, I didn't have any fixed plans, and the fee they were offering was substantial given the short notice and time sensitivity. It was 2 days of work, the 29th and 30th of December, and I'd travel back home on New Year's Eve. From a professional and financial standpoint, it was an easy yes. The job itself is in London. I live in the north of England, so overnight stays are a standard part of my working life. I routinely travel down, stay a couple of nights, do the job, and head home. This trip was no different. Travel down Sunday afternoon, work Monday and Tuesday, travel back Wednesday. Simple, efficient, and familiar. I mentioned this to my girlfriend, 33 female, in passing, more as an FYI than anything else. Almost immediately, she said she wanted to come with me. When I asked why, she said it would be nice for us to have a little break together in London and spend some quality time. I tried to manage expectations straight away. I told her clearly that this was not a holiday, it was a work trip. I'd be leaving the hotel around 6 a.m., I'd be working all day, and I'd probably come back tired and not particularly sociable. I said she was welcome to come if she genuinely understood that, but she'd need to entertain herself during the day and couldn't complain about early mornings or me being unavailable. She reassured me that she was absolutely fine with that. She said she could meet friends, go shopping, wander markets, do museums, tourist things, basically make her own plans while I worked. She sounded enthusiastic and independent, so I agreed. I added her name to the hotel booking and booked her a train ticket. I always travel into central London by train for work because parking is extortionate and often nowhere near the site, and I wasn't about to start making exceptions for this trip. We traveled down yesterday afternoon and arrived at the hotel early evening. The hotel is a budget chain I use frequently. I've stayed in dozens of their rooms over the years. They're clean, practical, and close to my sites. No spa, no luxury touches, but perfectly adequate for sleeping and showering. Exactly what I need for work. The moment we got into the room, I could feel the atmosphere shift. She looked around, clearly unimpressed, and said something along the lines of, "Oh, it's not very nice for a romantic break, is it?" That immediately set my teeth on edge. I reminded her, calmly at first, that this was not a romantic break. It was a work trip. I also pointed out that the room had been booked before she even asked to come, and that I wasn't going to upgrade or spend extra business money on a hotel just to make it feel more luxurious, when luxury wasn't the purpose of the trip. She didn't outright argue, but she made her displeasure very clear. She pulled a face, sighed heavily, and went quiet in that pointed way that lets you know someone is annoyed but doesn't want to say it out loud. I tried to ignore it, unpacked my bag, and went about my usual routine, but the mood was already off. It felt like we'd barely arrived, and she was already disappointed that the trip wasn't matching some version she'd built up in her head. I fell straight back into my normal work trip routine. As soon as we got settled, I unpacked my clothes, laid out what I'd need for the next couple of days, and plugged in my tools to charge overnight. This is muscle memory for me at this point. I've done it dozens of times in dozens of identical rooms. After that, I told her I was going to head out to scout the property I'd be working on and get a feel for the surrounding area. I asked if she needed anything from the shops while I was out. She said no, and I left as she was just getting into the shower. I was gone for about an hour. I walked the site, figured out the best route for the morning, and stopped at a supermarket on the way back. I picked up what I always do: bottled water, protein bars, bananas, basic stuff that keeps me going during long work days until I grab something hot in the evening, usually a kebab or something quick and filling. I'm not struggling financially, but I'm also very conscious that every pound I spend while traveling comes directly out of my profits. I don't see the point in splurging when I'm literally just there to work, sleep, and repeat. When I got back to the hotel around 6 p.m., the atmosphere immediately felt off again. She was dressed up, properly dressed up, nice outfit, hair done, makeup half finished. It genuinely caught me off guard. I assumed she'd made plans with a friend or was heading out somewhere on her own, so I casually asked where she was going. That question set her off completely. She snapped at me, sharp and irritated, telling me to go and put my nice clothes on because we were going out. I just stared at her for a second, confused, and then told her I hadn't brought any nice clothes. I also reminded her, again, that I wasn't going out anywhere. I had work in the morning and needed an early night. It was like I dropped a bomb. She immediately started crying, full on tears, and accused me of ruining her plans. Apparently, she'd booked a reservation at a restaurant, something she had never mentioned to me at any point. She went on about how she'd imagined us having a nice evening together, how she'd made an effort, how I was being cold and unromantic. I told her, again, that this was not a holiday. I reminded her that I'd been very clear before we even traveled that this trip was strictly work. I explained that my plan for the evening was exactly what it always is on work trips. Eat something simple, go back to the room, maybe play on my Switch 2 for a bit, and go to sleep. That only made things worse. She started crying harder, accusing me of not caring, of treating her like an inconvenience. Then came another jab about the hotel, how it wasn't nice enough, how it didn't feel special, how nothing about the trip matched what she'd expected. At that point, I'd completely run out of patience. I told her, bluntly, that she was upset entirely because of her own actions. That she had ignored everything I'd said, built an entirely different version of this trip in her head, and then got angry when reality didn't match it. I said I wasn't going to be sympathetic to tears that were the result of her unilaterally deciding that my work trip was actually a romantic getaway, despite me explicitly telling her it wasn't. That didn't go down well at all. She stormed into the bathroom and locked the door, still crying. I stood there for a moment, feeling equal parts exhausted and incredulous. We hadn't even been in London 24 hours, and already the trip had turned into emotional chaos, all because she refused to accept what this trip actually was. I didn't try to argue through the door. I didn't knock or plead or chase after her. I grabbed my jacket and went back out, got some food for us both, and ate alone while walking the streets. Honestly, it felt calmer out there than it did in that hotel room. By the time I got back to the room that evening, the atmosphere had completely shifted. She looked calmer, softer, like she'd actually taken the time to think about what had happened earlier. She apologized properly. Not the defensive kind, but a quiet, genuine apology. She'd changed into her comfy clothes, no makeup, hair tied up. It felt like a reset. We ate the food I'd brought back, sat side by side on the bed doom-scrolling for a bit, barely talking but not tense either. Eventually we put a film on and watched it half-heartedly, both of us drifting in and out of attention. It felt normal, peaceful even. By the time it ended, I was knackered. I set my alarm for the morning, reminded her again that I'd be up at 6 a.m., and slid into bed while she went to finish up in the bathroom. I'd literally just rested my head on the pillow when she came out and very deliberately cleared her throat and said my name. I was already half gone, eyes heavy, brain switching off. I told her whatever was could wait until tomorrow and that she should just get into bed. That's when she snapped. I've put in all this effort, and you're not even going to look? I sighed, rolled back over, grabbed my glasses from the bedside table, flicked the lamp on, and looked over. She was standing there in a full-on sexy maid outfit, stockings, apron, the lot. Clearly something she'd planned. She climbed straight onto the bed, straddled me, and immediately started trying to initiate sex. I stopped her gently, but firmly. I told her she looked incredible because she genuinely did, but that it was nearly midnight. I was up in a few hours, and I needed to sleep. I wasn't rejecting her. I was exhausted. She exploded. Well, F you. And with that, she stormed back into the bathroom and locked the door for the second time that night. I didn't chase her. I didn't argue. I turned the light off, took my glasses off, rolled back over, and went to sleep. At some point, I don't know how long later, she came back to bed. I was half asleep when she wrapped her arms around me, hugged me tightly, and whispered that she was sorry for shouting. I murmured something back, barely conscious, and drifted off again. The next morning, I got up quietly, showered, dressed, and tried not to wake her. Before I left, I kissed her on the forehead, told her I loved her, said I was heading to work, and left the room. The workday itself was completely unremarkable. Long, methodical, mentally draining but straightforward. I left site around 6 p.m. and got back to the hotel just after past. She was there when I walked in. I asked how her day had been, and she said she'd been shopping, which was obvious given the number of bags scattered around the room. I didn't comment, just went to grab a shower. When I came out, towel around my waist, she told me she'd laid some clothes out for me. I walked over to the bed and saw a full brand new outfit, shirt, trousers, even shoes. Clearly not cheap. I thanked her, genuinely, but said I was going to put my comfy clothes on since I'd been in work gear all day and just wanted to relax. She snapped instantly. You're not going out in your scruffs. It caught me completely off guard. I asked calmly, why not? That's when she told me, not asked, told me, that we were going out for food and drinks with one of her friends and the friend's husband. No discussion. No heads up. No consideration for the fact that I'd worked all day and was doing the exact same again in the morning. I reminded her again that this was a work trip, that I was tired, that I hadn't agreed to any plans, that I didn't even know these people. She rolled her eyes and said it would look rude if I didn't come, that she'd already told them I would, and that she'd gone to all this effort, buying me clothes so I could make a good impression. That's when it finally clicked for me. This wasn't about dinner, or sex, or hotels, or clothes. She had decided, despite everything I'd said repeatedly, that this trip was something else entirely. A couple's getaway. A romantic city break. A chance for her to play a role she'd already cast us in, without my consent. Standing there in that hotel room, dripping wet, exhausted, staring at clothes I hadn't asked for and plans I hadn't agreed to, I felt this deep, sinking frustration settle in my chest. No matter how clearly I spoke, no matter how many boundaries I set, she kept rewriting the situation to suit what she wanted, and then punishing me emotionally when I didn't play along. I completely lost my shit at that point. I'd already explained this to her 3 times in less than 24 hours, and something in me just snapped. I told her, bluntly, that this was the 3rd time I'd reminded her I was here for work, not for whatever fantasy she'd built up in her head. When I called her ideas stupid, she recoiled like I'd slapped her. She said it was hurtful. I didn't back down. I told her that unilaterally planning romantic dinners, outfits, sex, and social plans on a working damn trip was incredibly damn stupid. Not misguided. Not misunderstood. Stupid. Because it required actively ignoring everything I'd said, repeatedly, and then expecting me to magically transform into the version of me she wanted once we arrived. That's when the crying started. Full-on sobbing. And honestly, I felt nothing but exhaustion. I told her I wasn't interested in her tears. That she's a full-grown woman who had made a conscious choice to ignore very clear information, invent plans that involved another person without their consent, and then act wounded when reality didn't bend to her expectations. I told her she wasn't a victim here. She was just disappointed because she didn't get what she wanted. She accused me of not caring about her. That's when I really went in. I told her caring about someone doesn't mean abandoning your own responsibilities, boundaries, or sanity to play along with their delusions. I pointed out that she had decided, entirely on her own, that my work trip was a romantic getaway, despite me explicitly saying it wasn't, multiple times. I told her she could sulk from now until 2036 if she wanted, but I wasn't taking even 1 ounce of responsibility for her being upset because this situation was entirely self-inflicted. She was absolutely bawling at that point, like, collapsed on the bed, gasping for air, crying. I didn't yell. I didn't slam anything. I just felt done. I got dressed, grabbed my wallet, and told her I was going out to get food. I texted her from outside asking if she wanted anything. No sarcasm. No jabs. Just logistics. She replied almost immediately, I'm going home. Honestly, I felt relief before I felt anything else. I got back to the hotel about half an hour later. The room was quiet. Her bags were gone. Her toiletries were gone. The clothes she'd laid out for me were gone. She'd actually left. Open return ticket, thankfully, so at least there wouldn't be another fight about logistics or money. Now I'm sat alone on the edge of this stupid budget hotel bed, picking at the food I bought for her. Appetite completely gone. The room feels calmer without her here, but also heavier. Like all the tension has drained out and left this dull ache behind. I keep replaying everything in my head, over and over, trying to figure out what else I could possibly have done. What words I could have used. What tone. What phrasing. What magical combination of sentences would have finally made it sink in. And I keep coming back to the same question, looping endlessly in my mind. How could I have made it any clearer that my work trip was not our romantic getaway? Because I didn't hint. I didn't imply. I didn't leave room for interpretation. I said it plainly, repeatedly, calmly, firmly, and yet somehow I still ended up here, alone in a hotel room, questioning my own communication skills, while she's on a train home convinced I don't care about her.